be careful what you wish for, because if you're not ready, you're going to mentally fuck yourself. No matter what somebody told me, I didn't believe it. So even now, if somebody tells me you can't be men's hairdresser of the year, alright, watch me do it then. You know, like, in them moments you really start to question, do I want this or do I not?
Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of the Network Podcast. We're really excited to be back again, doing another one for you. For everybody that tuned in last time, we really appreciate it. Last episode was a good one.
It was. Welcome back, first and foremost. We kind of skimmed past Lee's story on the first episode, so he more than got his chance last time.
Yeah, went on a bit of a rampage on the last episode.
I think all relevant, absolutely. The whole story counts as to where you're at today, and
it was good. It was good to very cathartic getting all that out. It's almost
reflecting.
like a bit of a movie going on in your head to get that out, and
just reflecting, cool. Right?
So today we're going to get away from me and we're going to switch it over to you.
Cool. So, we'll get into my story a little bit. I guess these two episodes, getting these done right at the very beginning of the podcasting journey, is probably of importance because I feel like they'll always just be there for people to go back. Yeah. You know, some people might discover the podcast 10 episodes deep.
Yep.
And they might be like, oh, I wonder what the story is with these boys. And they might just go back and have a look at these two episodes.
Yeah, because I think it'd probably just get a bit boring if we just keep talking about our story all the time.
Yeah.
We drop it in here and there, little nuggets of it, but yeah.
Like we said in the last podcast, at the beginning of each and every class that we do, we always talk about ourselves at the beginning, and it's something, again, that we do find a little bit awkward to a degree, unless it's actually scheduled like it is today or yesterday. So this is our opportunity, I guess, to be able to tell our story, and hopefully people can take something away from it,
find the value in it,
get a bit of inspiration from it, and who knows. All right, so let's go. So we get into it. We'll go straight in.
Let's start. Take me back. What was it like for you as a child? A young man.
Oh, child. So
a young nipper.
Okay.
Where did it start?
How far back?
From what you can remember.
How far back do you want to go in terms of what? In what context?
I guess, what was it like growing up for you?
To be honest, yeah.
Before anything sort of like significant moments, life changing sort of activities and things like that. What was it like?
I would say like my upbringing was very, I don't want to say privileged. I think people where I'm from would think that I have a privileged upbringing due to my family and the success within my family. So basically my granddad, on my dad's side, he came from nothing. Family of 13, he was the seventh child.
Wow.
Very small village in Cork. And he started a car dealership and he developed it into a massive company. He was like the number one Opel, Saab, Chrysler, Jeep across Ireland. His best friend, who's still alive now, I'm pretty sure, was a promoter who helped bring like Michael Jackson to Ireland and stuff. So my granddad kind of came from nothing. He had that coming from nothing story, and he turned himself into like a baller essentially. At that time, especially, he had the biggest house in Fermoy. Had all the flash, all the money, everything. So I guess, from the outside looking in, people probably thought, oh yeah, the McCarthy's in Fermoy, they're rich.
I was going to say, whose side was that on?
My dad's side.
Your dad's side said that was the McCarthy name,
Yeah, but so we'll get deep with it. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, let's go in.
My parents separated when I was very young, like so young that I can't remember, like 10 weeks or something like crazy.
Oh, so you were like a baby.
Yeah, so they separated then. So I can't remember any of, you don't really remember things in your childhood being good, but like if there was money around, it would have been when I was very young.
Right.
But I always lived with my mom, and my mom's side of the family would have been at that time a bit more humble, I guess.
Yeah.
In terms of like, you know, my mom's comes from a farming background. I kind of touched on that yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that people don't really know about me, is I got that farming background to me as well. So I guess the mix of both of them kind of gave me the humility on both ends. I could see what it was like for people who are living kind of almost like the high life, and I could also relate to, I guess, just your kind of everyday family, which my mom's family was, and with really great morals, really great kind of loving nature, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think that's really important, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
There's certain morals and sort of structures in your brain's framework that you can't get any other way than having that from an early age.
No, and you know, there's always, look, I won't get too deep into that because I don't want to offend anybody, but there's always been a stigma around my family where I'm from.
Right.
Oh, they got everything. They got the money. They got this. They got that. They have it easy. You know.
And is that from the grandfather's line?
Yeah, but like he worked hard to get to that point, and that's what people are missing. They just think, these people had this handed to them. Yeah, maybe like my dad and like his siblings might have had it a bit easier than my granddad did, but still, you know, like that's not their fault.
No.
My granddad created that life for them, and it was up to him and how he did it. But you know, that kind of, again, I guess coming back to the stigma thing, put this stigma around me and my family in school. So, you know, our hard work was always a bit discredited.
Right.
And I think that's maybe why I work so hard now.
Does that attribute to what you do now?
I think it probably does, yeah. Like it's almost like a proving people wrong type of thing.
Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting because my mom's a hairdresser. She's been a hairdresser for, hell of a long time, over 30 years. She's had her own salon for almost that time too. And it would have been very, very easy for me to just set up shop in Ireland. This is skipping a bit of the story, but it would have been easy for me to just set up shop in Ireland. But I know that people would have always been just like, in my hometown, they would have been like, oh, sure, no wonder he's doing good in hair because his mom's a hairdresser and he got the salon handed to him and blah 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 blah. You know, just talking shit like people do in a small town, to be honest. And people are probably going to be listening to this now, but I don't give a fuck, to be honest.
It's your time. What's the population of your hometown?
I would say it's about 10 to 15,000.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think
is.
Mine was about 300,000.
Okay.
So it's not a massive city, but nobody really knew your business.
No, everyone knows your business where I'm from.
You could go out, and I could go out all day in town and not see a single person that I knew. Just anonymous.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think
interesting.
I think like growing up, just to kind of come back a little bit on the story, before I even got to school, like my mom was always pretty good at trying to make me my own independent person with as little influence from either direction as possible.
That's cool.
She was really good that way. She would kind of, you know, she'd never try to subliminally tell me anything or force me in any direction. I tried a lot of different things, a lot of different sports, a lot of different interests, hobbies, all sorts of things growing up. And she just kind of, gave me the best life she possibly could. So I'm very grateful for her. And without my mom, I wouldn't be the person that I am today, for sure.
I think that's interesting with like the independence thing. Are you the eldest?
Yeah.
I'm the eldest of 4, and I think I just by chance got the independence. You know, looking after my mum and dad, looking after the younger brothers. Being the eldest boy, you're the one. You know, you have the responsibility first.
Yeah.
And so I just got independence, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think even when I had siblings, I always maintained that as well because I never lived with them. Because I have 2 brothers, but they're my 2 half brothers.
Right.
And my dad had them in his second marriage, so I always just almost lived the only child lifestyle.
How's your bond with them?
Great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Probably better for not living with them.
Yeah, that's like me and my brothers.
Yeah,
you know. I guess when you're younger, there's a little bit of that rivalry. Well, for me, there's that sibling rivalry.
Yeah, well, you were closer in age, that's why.
We were so close in age.
We were not that close in age.
Us eldest 3, it's a year between us.
Yeah.
me, Adam, Dan, there's a year between us. So yeah, there's that sibling rivalry. Moving away was crazy. I couldn't believe how much I missed them when I moved away. I never thought it would ever happen, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, especially when you live with them growing up and stuff. But yeah, no, I definitely do miss my brothers. We've got a great relationship.
Yeah.
Dion's about 7 years younger than me, or 6 years, 7 years, and Jack is 1 year younger than Dion. So there's quite a gap in between us.
Yeah.
So it is tough leaving them, because they do look up to me a lot. I know they do. And I'm probably one of the only people that they actually listen to about anything,
Sorry to detract from your story, but yeah, me and my younger brother, there's 10 years between us. And when I still lived at home, I think I was a big role model to him, because like I was working, I was like 18, he was like 8.
Yeah.
So, this is the big brother, and I was driving everywhere. I'd drop him off to school, I'd pick him up, on my days off from work, because I used to get a day off in the middle of the week, I'd just take him for a drive. It was cool for him,
Yeah.
And then when I left home to come to Australia, he was 11 at this point.
Yeah.
And then I didn't see him again until he was like 17.
Yeah,
18.
wow.
And he was a man now.
Yeah, different, right?
And it was
absolutely, it's
scary.
so crazy.
And I found it really hard to see him as a man.
Yeah.
Because I remembered him as the 11-year-old kid.
Yeah, of course.
And I feel like that might have affected our relationship a little bit.
Yeah. You kind of missed the years of where he's growing.
I missed all of his growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that the influence was just gone.
Yeah.
I was just gone. So.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough being over here. I think a lot of people listening to this are probably in Australia, from Australia.
Yeah.
And they don't understand the sacrifice that we have to make to be here, and not seeing your family. I see people complaining about the pettiest bullshit, and it's like, we can't even see our family. Just because you can't go on your holiday to Bali, or all these different things.
I'm at peace with it now.
Me too.
It's a choice, because it's a choice. Right?
It is a choice.
But I know deep down inside me, I chose to do it, and I'm very, very fortunate that my parents are just so supportive over that. They're always like, just go and do it. Just follow your dreams. Just do it. We never did it. Go and do it. But yeah, I always say to people, it's the best and worst thing I've ever done. It's the best thing, because the transformation over the last 10 years is unbelievable. I am a different person.
Yeah.
But it's the worst thing, because that's most of that time away from your parents, the hardships. You don't see your family, you don't see your brothers, you don't see your friends. All the friendship circles just gone, basically.
Yeah.
Keep in touch with a couple of people. So that's hard, but that's the growth phase. I think that was a huge growth phase.
Yeah, definitely. But
so let's get back to that.
So going forward from there, I think I've always had, I wouldn't say a chip on my shoulder. I think that's the wrong way to put it. But I've always felt a bit misunderstood.
Okay.
Even by my school teachers and stuff.
Yep.
Because I got this label put on me. Oh, he's a McCarthy. He's got they've got everything. This and that. He doesn't have to work for anything. This and that, right? Fuck. I don't know. Even in school, the conformative standards that school sets didn't really fit in with the way I thought about things, or the way I thought about the world, or whatever.
Yeah.
I had bigger aspirations. I always had bigger aspirations.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that people really got it. The people that were around me that could potentially influence me at that time, like my teachers and stuff, I never looked at them as inspirational figures at all, ever.
Where do you think that bigger inspiration came from then?
Within myself, and looking at sports. It was sport really that started that, because you look at people at the top level of sport and you think, I'm going to be there, and fuck all of you guys, I'm going to get there. It was a bit like that.
Well, that's interesting. That's the sort of mentality in the UK, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was always told that. Don't ever do anything for free. Fuck everybody else. Do what you need to do. I know differently now, but that's a bit of a mentality.
Yeah, I think you develop that mentality over time as well.
Yeah.
It's ingrained in you, and even me thinking back to that now, it kind of explains a lot of my behaviours these days too. Yeah. My partner often asks me why do you think you're like that? And that's probably it.
Yeah.
I go around even nowadays thinking, nobody understands me.
Yeah.
But it's deep. It's probably it goes way back. Yeah. But I think, I had plenty of outlets to let that out and to try and prove myself and show myself. And I didn't win a lot, I don't know if anyone saw the American Crew thing, the video that we did, and we came second, or we didn't even come second. There was no second place. But like basically,
it wasn't even second.
Basically, losing to me is like coming second anyway. So it's kind of like, all right, well, we didn't win. That's absolutely fine, because I'm used to that. I've come second and third my whole life in everything, and it's just what keeps me moving forward. I think there's some more depth that we can get into on that in my story, but yeah, I pretty much knew early on that. And it sounds a bit fucking silly to say it, but like I kind of knew early on that this isn't for me here in my hometown. There's bigger things out there for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Before you move on, who were you trying to prove it to at that young? Like, is that something you're looking back on now and thinking I had something to prove, or did you think that at the time as well?
There's nobody in particular. There's not like a person that stands out. But I think it was just almost a stigma. It was the stigma that I was trying to prove wrong. I was trying to make my own. Yeah. I was trying to do my own thing.
Yeah, it was that stigma that was just the environment you were in, and didn't really.
Yeah, I was like, well, look. Yeah, these people might think this thing, or it's only a small probably percentage, but in my hometown, there's definitely that stigma, and then them people might think that, but I'm going to show them different. And much like we get these days where people say, oh, you guys are a lot different to what I thought you were going to be. Yeah. When I started cutting hair, that's what happened. People were like, oh, you were a lot different to what I thought you were going to be. And it's like, well, why did you create that preconceived idea of who I am then?
Where did that come from?
Who knows? And there's a big aspect of jealousy in it too. There is.
Yeah.
And jealousy is like love and hate at the same time, isn't it?
Yep.
You're hating on somebody because you'd love to be them almost. Yeah. It's kind of like that.
You're hating on them because you don't have what they have.
Yeah.
But you'd love to have what they have.
But it's just like walk a day in somebody else's shoes, and you'll realise that that's not necessarily the idea or the conception that you have in your mind. It's not always what's there. Like, I think people had the whole thing misinterpreted or misunderstood.
Yeah.
And that's probably what that comes from. And it's just like the never fully getting the recognition for what I was doing. I think that's what was driving me too.
Do you still feel the same now if you don't get recognition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, I do. That's probably why I work the way I work.
Yeah.
Because I'm always seeking the next bit of recognition, and like it's not necessarily that I don't know. I need to be honest with myself, don't I? It's almost like it's not going to be the detriment of my life, but it is something that's important to me because it keeps me stimulated, and it keeps me working towards something, and I love working towards things and working towards goals.
I'm like that. Structure for me is amazing. So we've had this conversation a lot, haven't we? We look at our to-do list, and some people would freak out. They'd be like, oh, but to us it's just, okay, this is a process we've got to get from here to here. Let's tick all these off. It's like the structure and the process of getting those done. That's interesting.
So from there, I think when I was in school, I always felt like I was being held back. So when I feel like that, kind of touched on it yesterday too, I didn't really give a shit. I didn't care for school too much. If I applied myself, I could have probably done well. I don't think at that time my creative needs were being met, so I just wasn't interested. There were certain topics that I knew would help me further in life. I would always just think in school, nah, this isn't going to help me later in life. Like, when the fuck have I ever used algebra since I left school? Not once.
It's weird. I always used to wonder where the hell that came from. Like we used to say that.
What's the relevance of that? Like,
when are we ever going to use this? It's like, how did we work that out? Like,
and why are we
how
learning?
Did we know?
Why are we having a whole dedicated time to religion?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Nah, silly.
It's culture, mate.
But then,
what
I actually did at that time, and I'm lucky that I had the support of my mom. Like, I used to channel my energy into other things, like my cycling at the time. I tried a lot of different sports growing up. I was pretty good at a lot of them. I was never the best at anything, and that's, I think, something that's a really key part of my story. And even to today, I'm definitely not the best hair cutter in the world. Like nowhere near it.
Are you not?
Like, no,
I thought you were.
nah, definitely not. But yeah, so I played racquetball quite a high level. I was one game away from. So this is another thing, right? I'm used to disappointment.
Yeah.
I'm used to disappointment and dealing with it and moving on.
It's how you deal with it, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm very used to that. So like, I was one place away in my racquetball journey to going to like the World Championships, and it was in our regional final. I was 10-1 up in the tiebreaker, and I lost 12-10. You have to lose by 2 points.
I don't know where to start with that. How did that happen?
I lost the head. But that's a lesson, you learn from that. When I finished that day,
you just had it in the back.
No, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I got out of serve. The guy got me out of serve at 10-1.
Right.
And I just couldn't get him back out of it.
Shook you.
Yeah,
You just got shook.
I was like, oh fuck, I've lost it now. It was a mentality thing.
Yep.
At that time, I was only about 14.
Yep.
And I remember after the game, broke my racket off the wall, and that was the end of my racquetball career. I just stopped there because I was like, you know what? Like, if I'm not going to the World Championships, then I'm not fucking doing this.
Yep.
And I've thought about that with everything that I've ever done. If I'm not going to get to the top 10% of something, then there's no point. Yeah. So from there, I just focused on my cycling career. I was always cycling, so we'll start on the cycling journey because that's where my life kind of went for such a long time.
What age were you when you started?
I was about 10 or 11, 10 maybe. Yeah. My uncle Noel got into cycling. Noel lives in Adelaide now. So my uncle Noel got us into cycling. All of the young guys like around my age kind of got together, a cycling club in Fermoy. It was really nice. We used to go to all like the different races at the weekends together, just have a bit of fun. It was more of a social thing to begin with. I was still dipping my finger into other sports and trying different things, so I never took my cycling career fully seriously until I was about, but like up to this point, let's like, I'll just go back a little bit. I was pretty good. Like, I would be top 3 in the country.
Wow.
At nationals. And I wouldn't really win too many races. There was a couple of boys that were a bit bigger and stronger than me. My cousin Robert John and Davy Chambers. 2 boys might be watching this, who knows. We should get Robert on the podcast. I think he'd be pretty good, actually. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'll tell you a couple of stories about Robert in a sec. But yeah, so I used to always lose to them, so I was almost like the third place guy, Yeah. They were battling it out for the win, and I'd just come in and take third. Like, I wasn't developed enough or big or strong enough to do it at that time. I was small, and as I guess that kind of that put a determination in me to want to get bigger and stronger. So I kept training. I would train harder than everyone, and eventually over the years that accumulates, it compounds. You eventually catch up development wise, and then you surpass and you keep going. And that's what happened. I went to, I think in your cycling career, at a certain point you have to choose, okay, am I going to do this full time or am I not? Because you can't just be doing other sports and trying to cycle at the same time. It's a full-time sport. Like, you need to dedicate everything to it.
I think a lot of sports are though, aren't they? If you're going to go to that level,
yeah, no, you need to dedicate. You need to make a decision.
All in, don't you?
Yeah, you need to make. At a certain point, you need to make a decision.
That was my problem in hockey. I had that moment, and there were certain circumstances that I just couldn't go all in.
Yeah, and I used to play soccer too. Like, I was playing soccer for a while. This is another thing that kind of fucking pissed me off in my life too. Like, I was playing soccer. At one stage, I was pretty okay when I was younger. I was pretty good. Would always start, and then like, I don't know what it was. Me and one of the managers never saw eye to eye, and I just never got played. And eventually, same thing as the racquetball, I was just like, fuck this, I'm not going back anymore, It was almost like the misunderstood thing again.
There's a theme coming up here, I think, isn't it? You're good at knowing when to cut it.
Yeah.
That is something I really struggle with. A lot of like worry comes into my mind when, is it the right thing to do? But I heard someone, I think it was Ty Lopez, always talks about, that quote, most men live lives of quiet desperation. And he says, the way he puts it is there's nothing worse than waking up one day realizing you spent too much time on the wrong thing.
You know what Stephen says as well?
Time is so precious.
Stephen says, contrary to popular belief, sometimes quitting is for winners. Knowing when to step away from a certain situation is key in terms of happiness and fulfillment and moving on to the next step of your life, the next stage.
What a skill! What a hard thing to
be
learn.
able to just be like, nah, all right, it's time now to like move on, try something new, and put my energy elsewhere. So I learned that from quite an early age.
But society will tell you otherwise.
And I think at that time it was okay because I was so young that I wasn't so set on this identity I was creating for myself. Stepping away from my cycling career was much harder because my identity was built upon being a cyclist. From the age of 15 until 21, I was like all in, all chips on the table cycling. Even my teachers in school, one of them who initially like we got along, then he didn't really take to me too much because I didn't care about school, and then he started cycling, and then he realised what cycling was all about, and he realised, okay, maybe Eoin isn't a waste man, maybe he's actually doing something that's relevant. And then he told me once, he was like, don't have a plan B. This is what teachers should never tell any student, by the way. That's what they say, but like maybe to me this struck a chord. But he was like, this stuck with me for my life actually. He was like, don't have a plan B, because as soon as plan A gets a little bit too hard, plan B is going to be there for you to figure out plan B when it comes to it, cross that bridge when it comes to it. And like that's kind of what's happened throughout my whole life. So what a really pivotal moment in my decision making process, I guess, for my life was when I went to the Tour de France. So I went to Monaco to the Tour de France, to the start of it with my cousins, in 2009 I think it was, and I was about 16 at the time. I came back and I was like, yeah, cycling is what I want to do. Like it was Lance Armstrong's comeback year.
Just buzzing on it,
Oh, it was just such a fucking sick event, like unreal. So
I'd love to go to that.
So
I'd
cool.
love to see it.
So cool. Such a circus. Like you're just like, I was like, this is where I'll get my recognition.
All your idols are there.
Yeah, everyone was there.
You're like, whoa.
Yeah, met them all.
How crazy.
Nuts. So I was like, all right, cool. That's what I want to do. So after that, the reverse engineering started. How am I going to do that? Trained, started investing in myself, got coaches. Eventually that developed onto me becoming decent enough, never the best or anything, getting onto the Irish national teams, always showing up, always being there for the trials, this and that. Got on the national team, did some races, decided nobody's going to do this for me. So I was like, when I finish school, I'm going to go to Belgium. I think, so this is what happened actually. So in my 5th year in school, so in Ireland you have 6 years in school. In my 5th year in school, in the summer holidays, I reached out to a team in Belgium and I asked, can I come and ride for you guys for the summer? They said, yeah. So I went there for about 10 weeks at 17. Rented a room in a place that was decent enough at the time, but there was no cooking facilities or anything. So here I was at 17 years old for 10 weeks in Belgium, for the most part by myself. My mom came at the beginning for the first couple of days to kind of help me suss the place out. Had to fend for myself, had to find my way to the races. Wow. Sometimes I would have to ride 2 hours to a race, do the race, and ride 2 hours home afterwards.
Wow.
So I'd ride 60 kilometers to a race. This is at 17 years old. Do a 90 to 100 kilometer race and ride 60k home. Yeah. Now, in them moments, you really start to question, do I want this or do I not? Yeah. But like until I get to that stage where I think that I'll be happy, I'm not going to stop. So it was kind of like that. Yeah. Did that for 10 weeks. Had crazy experiences there. Had to grow up pretty quickly, figure things out for yourself. Yeah. And then I came back, and a lot of the time over there, you're in Dutch and Flemish speaking teams, and there's nobody who can even speak English to you. So you're just sitting around at dinners with your teammates,
silent,
and you just can't really. You're just observing.
Yep.
You're literally just observing. It's almost like you're observing just the energy, because you can't understand the conversation, but you can kind of contextualize it through the energy, which is very interesting. Because we talk about that now, about the observing thing. Yesterday we were talking about it. But to go back to the story, so from there, the team wanted to keep me for the next year. So they were like, yeah, we'd love to have you next year. They said, can you come back? And I said, yeah. I just need to speak to my mom, see what's going on. At that time, I was like, I want to finish school. I want to just quit school and go to Belgium and cycle. Now, look, I can understand her worry at that time, because it's a big thing to do.
Massive.
She never liked school herself, my mom. So, like, I think that really helped me. And our deal, I guess, it was like a security thing for her and for me, I guess. But our deal was, I finish school and then I can go and cycle full time. That was the plan.
Fair.
So I went back to school, of course, knowing that I had a contract for the following year. Didn't give a single shit. When my mind was somewhere else.
Really doesn't matter.
Didn't care. I would take class off all the time to go training. It's not like I was just bunking class and doing nothing productive. And that's what people couldn't understand. I never did my homework and stuff like that. I didn't care. It's not that I just about passed everything. I did alright in some subjects. Like, I was alright in English. Always could hold my own in English. And I passed everything. So she was happy. I was happy. I went and cycled full time. I remember in school, there's a thing in Ireland called the CAO. So that's like the form that you fill out for college. And my principal at the time and my vice principal were so concerned, because I was the only person in my whole year who didn't fill it out.
Wow.
And they were like, they called my mom in once to have a meeting. They were like, Owen's not filling out his CAO. We're worried about him. We're worried about his future. What's he going to do? This and that. And my mom was just like, he can do what he wants.
Great advice.
And you know what? Even at that time, I was like, if it all fails, mom, I'll do hair.
You just go and do it, yeah.
Yeah, because you have the salon. I'm your only child. The salon will be mine anyway, eventually. So it'd be nice for me to even know how to do hair. So that was the kind of, I guess, plan B, but I kept it so far in the back of my mind that it never really became an option until the very end. So I moved to Belgium. Did that for 3 years. So many lessons, like that could have a whole podcast in itself. We won't get into everything. But there were so many lessons and so many things that I learned throughout them years in terms of resilience, determination, dedication, how to stick to things, how to achieve goals. We said this on our walk earlier. But everything that I do now in hair seems very easy in comparison to the life that I lived then. And I always had this goal in mind. If I get to this certain point, then I'll be happy with my career. And if it goes further than that, then great. If not, okay, I'll accept it. But if I don't get to this certain stage and I'm not even able to try it, then I'll never know.
Yeah.
So there was a specific team that I wanted to get onto, it was an Irish professional team sponsored by An Post, which is the Irish post office. And if I didn't get there, this is where all like the promising young Irish riders would go, and I was like, if I don't get here, then that's it. I won't be happy with my career. And I even remember at the time, growing up, right before I went to Belgium, my coach at the time, I remember being out for a ride with him. I used to drive a couple of hours, right? This is when I was 18. I used to get up in Ireland 7 a.m, 6 a.m, drive 2 hours, meet my coach in his hometown at about 8 a.m, go out for a 3 or 4 hour ride and then drive home again. And I remember one time he told me, he was kind of backhandedly telling me like, oh, make sure now you keep studying and you go to college and you do all this, because only a certain amount of people make it. Only a certain amount of people ever get to the top level. So he was basically telling me at that time, you're not good enough to do this.
Right.
And again, that was another moment where I was like, I'll show you, you know?
Yeah.
And I think we both have that similar trait in our personalities.
Yeah.
I was like, nah, I'm going to show him. I don't care. I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep knocking on the door. I don't care how many times I get turned down. And you know what? I also realized throughout them years, if you want to do something, You have to do it yourself. You have to reach out and you have to ask the questions, or you don't get the answers.
I was going to say that there's a lot of themes coming up as I'm listening to you. There's so many themes I'm relating to. Like this whole trip, you know, when I came to Australia, even let's go back, cutting hair. There's never been a plan B. I had to make this work.
Yeah.
Like clients will ask me, "Oh, have you ever thought about doing anything else?" Honestly, no. Why? Because there's never been a plan B.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what else I would do, because I know I've got to make this work.
Yeah.
But I've been like that since a little kid. If you're going to do something, no one's going to hold your hand.
No.
You go and do it. You go and make it work.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think even when I did make it work, right? So I got to that team.
Yeah.
Eventually, I got there. And along the way, I was part of many Irish national teams, rode European championships for Ireland, did all these bigger races for the national team, got to that team, and it's like that coach at that time, he still didn't really even say anything, you know?
Yeah.
It's just this Irish mentality, man. It's just
I think it's just British mentality in general.
It's
like
just
people
nuts.
like that around my area as well.
Yeah, so look, I don't care. No answer is sometimes the best answer.
Yep.
When you don't hear anything, that's kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, you said that I wouldn't be able to do this.
Yeah.
I did it.
Now I am.
But pretty early on, right, I got to that team. That was in 2015. Lots of lessons learned in between. But 2015, I got to that team. I pretty much knew straight away. We did our training camps in Spain. We did our pre-season. Everything was great. I worked as hard as I possibly could. When I look back now, I really left no stone unturned. I was all in for pro cycling. No, I really couldn't have. Like, Hannah's asked me this a few times as well. She's like, could you have actually worked harder on it? I really don't think I could have.
Yeah.
There's a physical limit, like, that you can only do so much.
Yep.
I really don't think I could have worked harder than what I did. I was meticulous in my training. I said this in the first episode. I was really meticulous. I had a really great stretching routine. I had all my training. I was training 20 to 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
You know, how much more can you do on a bike?
Like, look, again, like I never, got to your level in terms of, like, athletic level, but I would be the same. Playing hockey as a kid, I trained with all the teams in the city. I turned up to everybody's training sessions 3-4 times a week. My mum and dad would be driving me around all over the place, because I wanted to be good and I wanted to train. Something I'm hearing what you're saying though is as I'm kind of thinking who you are now today, do you think that's giving you a confidence? Because I think this way a little bit. You can do a lot of different things. Like you can apply yourself to anything and have some sort of success in most things. Yeah, because without being unrealistic.
No, because it requires the same principles.
Because people say to me all the time that they're like, you must be born to do hair. I'm like, I don't think I am. I think my gift is knowing how to learn, knowing how to develop a process, and knowing how to get from A to B.
Reverse engineering
and
knowing how hard to work to get there. That's the relentlessness of it.
That's my gift, and I am relentless.
Yeah, me too.
And I think I'm hearing that in your story there, and I could kind of relate to that as well. Obviously not to the same athletic level, but it's a mindset that you can develop.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think if something that's not developed early, it's hard to develop it in your adult life, because so many other things come along, responsibilities, and people don't act like that when you're getting older. It's all about not being like that. Yeah. It's kind of what shaped me to be who I am today. Yeah.
All of these experiences and people telling me that you're not good enough, or you can't do this and you can't do that. Now, coming back to my family life, my mom and dad were always really good at telling me that I'm amazing at everything. So they instilled that confidence in me.
Yeah.
My mom especially was so loving towards me that no matter what somebody told me, I didn't believe it.
Wow.
I was like, no. So even now, if somebody tells me you can't be men's hairdresser of the year, all right, watch me do it then.
That's your opinion. That's an opinion.
No, but I'll do it then. And I'll work harder than anyone else, and I'll do the extra 10%.
Yep.
Because that's what ultimately counts.
Yeah.
Nobody could have predicted me getting to the team that I was at on that last year.
No.
Looking at the results of my races growing up as a child, you would never have picked that guy to be where I got to.
Yeah. Amazing.
And it was more of a mentality. Like, there was a time in 2014, I think it was, on the Irish national team where in certain races I was almost given like that road captain role because I was the most level-headed. Like, I was the biggest, I guess, team player in the team. I would help other people. I was very willing to help other people. Because I knew if I do that, that's how I can actually sustain a career in the cycling industry, because I wasn't super talented at anything. I wasn't a great sprinter, I wasn't a great climber, I wasn't a great time trialist. I was just an all-rounder.
Yeah.
Kind of a bit like that with hair too. Bit more of an all-rounder. Like,
that's an amazing like capacity to have at that age. I wasn't like that, I don't think. I was very one track, you know.
Yeah, so like,
very stuck in my own lane.
Cycling is it's much more of a team sport than people think. You know, like, obviously you're cycling your own bike, but
yeah,
it's much more of a team sport. Like, we have team leaders, and I would have had to go back to the car, get bottles for them, look after them, make sure that everything was okay and they were in the best possible position all day. They weren't getting hit from the wind at any singular time. Crazy. Look, there's almost too much to get into about cycling.
Would you all rotate on that? Would they do that for you too?
If the terrain suited your capabilities, yeah. Or if you were in a particular stage of good form. So, like, say for example, if I was on really good form and I was getting good results in races, and like, you know, you have almost seasons of form. Like, you might have 6 to 8 weeks where you're just really flying.
On fire,
like, yeah, you're going good, and then you might have another 6 to 8 weeks of nothing. And that's one thing about cycling, right? Like, and I think this is what's developed my mindset too. You work super hard 6 months before the season. It's a full-time job, and you might only get 1 to 2 pieces of gratification throughout the whole year. And that's what you work for, is that 1 to 2 pieces of gratification. Coming back to the pivotal moments thing, like, I can remember less than a handful of times where I've been really happy after a race.
Yeah.
And even then, you're still not even that happy.
That shows why you are the way you are today, and the same with me, you know.
But we don't celebrate anything.
All I need to know,
we really don't celebrate anything.
All I need to know, just tell me once.
Yeah.
Did I do it good? Yep. Okay. Thanks. On to the next thing. You know, I don't need. That's it. It's the same with all that process growing up. You know, you get those small moments of gratification, and then boom, it's on to the next thing. I don't need that to like sit and wallow in it, and you know.
Yeah.
That explains a lot.
It does, and I think the required amount of effort for the result that you get is incomparable.
Yep.
And I think that's why you really have to enjoy the process of what you're doing every day. That's why I loved training. At the time in cycling, I loved training because it was problem solving. It was ticking boxes, and I just loved it. I was like, yeah, I'm happy. I could do my 3-4 hours, tick all the numbers that I needed to do on the computer, because we used to ride with computers. I'd see all the numbers that I wanted to see, and then I could sit down, I could put my legs up, and I could be happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I'm still that way today. But moving back to when I turned professional for that year, I knew in the first race that I wasn't going to continue.
Right. What happened? What happened in your mind?
We were in a race in France. It was called GP Marseille. So it was in Marseille in France. And it was February in France. So it was about 2 degrees, 3 degrees, very cold. And the race started. And this was a big race. So it was like with guys who ride the Tour de France. Like a big race. And we went up this mountain at the beginning. It was like a 10-kilometer climb. And I was like, all right, like, yeah, it was rapid. Like, it was so rapid. Like, it was crazy. I was like really suffering, like in the red zone straight away. I was like, holy fuck, this is crazy. And then I got to the top of the climb. I was still in the group, which was still a peloton at this stage, because obviously everyone was fairly fresh. And I looked around and I thought, yeah, got over the climb, doing great. Looked around, there's like 2 people behind me. And I'm like, fuck. And all the cars. I was like, I thought I was on good form too. No.
You're at the back of the pack.
Different level. Absolutely different level.
Yeah.
Same thing happened a few days later. That was a 1-day race. 2 days later we started a 5-day race. And first couple of stages of that, I was just getting my ass handed to me, man.
Did anybody warn you about that? Did anybody tell you it might be like that?
Yeah, but like I thought I was going okay because we did our training camps.
Yeah.
And these boys had been at that level in the previous years and higher, and I was able to hold my own in the training camps.
Okay.
No, we'd do race simulations, we'd do all sorts of things at training camp.
Yeah.
And I thought I was alright, like, you know, but then maybe I just did too much. I think I might have overcooked it.
Yeah. Overtrained a little.
Overtrained, burnt out.
Not enough recovery. We've been talking about that a lot lately, haven't we? You imagine if you put in different recovery protocols and things like that.
Not enough recovery.
Would have been different.
Not enough recovery. So then that kind of was a setback in my mindset from the very start of the season. It didn't give me much confidence going forward in my cycling career. At that time, that's when the identity crisis started.
Yeah.
For me, it was an identity crisis. I'm not going to lie. It was 100%.
How many years had it been? Like, because you must have had a good run. Like,
it was
before you got to this point where you started to wobble a bit in the mind, you know.
No, so like before that, the year before that, at amateur level, or it's more semi-professional at that point because I was still doing it full time.
Yeah.
But technically, it's seen as amateur. I was very competitive in Belgium. Like I was top 10ing in races all the time, which is a high level of amateur racing.
This ain't just riding down the street, is it?
No. This is like a 3 to 4 hour bike race at 40 to 45, sometimes pushing up towards 50 kilometers an hour average speed.
Wow. What's your heart rate average on this stuff?
Like 160 to 180 BPM for 4 hours.
That's ridiculous.
It's outrageous. Like, we were high performing athletes. Like, that's something that people don't understand. When I say I was a cyclist, that was nice. Like, you know, as if I used to cycle down to the fucking shop.
It's a jolly down the lake.
No. This was some serious shit.
Just
you know?
think about that as well. Like, that heart rate, you would have been conditioned to that heart rate too. Someone else pushing the way you were, they might have been at 180, 200. I mean, I used to train to heart rate threshold to 135, 140.
Well, my max was around the 200.
How quick I used to get used to that.
Yeah.
I'd have be on the treadmill, say I was prepping for a competition or something. I could just do a quite brisk walk to get up to 135 at one point. Then I'd have to start jogging. In the end, to get myself to 140, I'm doing a slow run. And how conditioned you would have been to pushing at 160. That's someone else's 200. Yeah.
Like, my base level of heart rate was like 140 BPMs. Like, when I was just riding.
That's ridiculous.
That's for like 6 hours, 7 hours.
Hours on end.
Yeah.
Wow.
But like, I could do.
Wow.
But then I got to one point where I was living in Gran Canaria. I think that's like something I should touch on in a minute too. When I finished school, I went to Gran Canaria, and that's when I started my full-time cycling journey.
Yeah.
I remember, again, meticulous in my training. Had no internet over there. I was living with my granddad. He was there for I was there for about 6 months. He had an apartment there. I lived there with him. Meticulous in everything I was doing. Eating really well, sleeping really well, reading books. No Wi-Fi. It was almost like a bit of rehab almost.
Yeah.
I used to go on the internet 30 minutes a day in the cafe right before we went to dinner.
Yeah.
And I remember at one point there, my heart rate being 36. It was around 36 to 38 beats a minute. Resting heart rate.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's low.
Yeah, it was very low.
They say, is it between 40 and 60? On the lower end of that, 40 is like athlete level. So to be 36 to 38 is outrageous.
Yeah. So like, but that's what I was like. I was a high performance athlete, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just the mindset that I've taken from that. And I think, you know, even that 6 month period of my life living with my granddad, so that was a really pivotal moment in my life, you know, living with him for that 6 months. And I think I developed a lot of my habits going forward from there. And it's just funny now when I speak to people and they're like, I used to cycle, and I never get into it because it's just too long.
It's too much to talk about.
It's too long. Yeah. So that kind of continued. So the season in 2015 was my last season as a cyclist. And that was it. I wrapped up my career.
What was the feelings at the end?
So,
were you happy, or was it bittersweet? Or
so at the start of the season, I pretty much noticed straight away that I wasn't cut out for it.
Yeah.
I had to have that realization. The identity crisis started. I was like, oh, well, I've built my identity now to be a cyclist. Nobody knows me for anything else. This is what I said I was going to do in school. This. All these things were creeping in. And I was like, oh, fuck, I failed here, you know. But ultimately, my mental health started to take a toll. And I could see it around me too. You know, I could see around me, all my teammates. There was a trend where they were all quite depressed.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to get to that stage.
You see as well, like, I talk about it, I say, you know, putting the blinkers on like that and being so one-track mind is the blessed and the curse. It's a curse because you just don't see anything else outside of what you do, and you become that thing. Mm-hmm. You know, like I said it in a class a while back, it's like I'm trying to focus on if hair was taken away from me tomorrow, what's left? Mm-hmm. You know, I don't just want to be hair.
No.
You know, and I think that's what happened. Probably what happened a bit there, wasn't it? You just were the cyclist.
And I guess when you
strip it back, you're like, whoa.
And I guess when you're young, you don't really have any other plans because that's what you're set out to do. You know, like that's your dreams. You know, but fortunately enough for me, I had achieved my dreams at that point.
Yeah,
I had raced with the people who I have posters of them in my bedroom at home. Yeah. And next thing you know, there I am standing next to them on the start line of a race.
Crazy.
So that's taught me how you can visualize something, want something, and if you work hard enough for it, you can get it.
You can get it, exactly.
So that's what cycling taught me. I got to the team that I wanted to get to. I tested it out. I saw the level. I saw what was required. Did I have it? I just physically didn't have it. Like my genetics didn't allow it for it. Yeah. I think at a certain point, genetics do come into it too. Yeah. You know, you can work as hard as you 100%. Want. At a sport like that, there's only so much oxygen you can pump to your blood before it.
Have you seen Breaking 2? Have you seen that?
No.
So they take some of the fastest marathon runners and they try to get them to break the 2-hour marathon.
Yeah.
And that Kenyan guy, he's like the favourite to do it.
Yeah.
And they were going through their training. They tried to use the best scientifically proven training methods. They're all hooked up to machines. They're like getting them on a treadmill. They're measuring their efficiency from one shoulder to the other, you know, every step. And they were saying there's a point where it is the genetically gifted people that end up winning. Yeah. If you train them in the right way, and they related it to VO2 max. And
that's the same thing as cycling. I used to get linked up to the machines all the time.
Yeah, I used to love thinking about and learning about VO2 max. And what they said was your VO2 max is your VO2 max. You can't get a bigger VO2 max, but you can work to the threshold that you have. Yeah. So if your VO2 max is bigger than mine, there's no way I can get your VO2 max. Yeah. I can push to my threshold. If you're only pushing to a little bit and I'm pushing to my threshold, I might be better than you at that point. But you have the potential to go past me. And that's just genetics. You can't.
You can't do that.
You can't change that.
And it's like you can see a lot of the people who are really good at cycling, their parents were cyclists or their parents were Olympians or athletes or whatever, right? Like it runs in the family.
Passed on some sort of genetic capabilities.
Yeah, my parents never did any sport. Yeah. Nothing, like zero sport. Right. So like that was all just trained into me. Yeah. And like when we did them tests in the lab with the VO2 max, mine was like 70, like low 70s. Now the high performance athletes, the ones that win the Tour de France and stuff, are low level 80s. So that's a whole 10 points above. So I didn't have it. I just didn't have it.
Crazy.
I didn't have it. Yeah. And I came to realize that I didn't have it. And again, the whole thing about quitting is for winners. It got to a certain point where you're in such a bubble, but once you step out of that bubble and you realize that life can be different in a different avenue of life, or you know, you can start to kind of shape your life in a different way, it's very hard to go back into that bubble. You just can't. It's impossible. So like I was having bad accidents. That's another big part of cycling that is very rough. You know, you have bad accidents, you get bust up. Yeah. I remember I had one particularly bad accident about a month into my first season, and I was sitting at home for about 4 or 5 weeks with my leg up in the air because I'd bust my ankle really bad. Wow. And when you're sitting there and you're having that reflective time to yourself and you can't ride the bike, you can't do the things that you can normally do, you start to go inward and you're like, what am I other than a cyclist? Yeah. Other than cycling, what do I have to show for myself? And what if the next accident is the worst one? So from there, like not even the worst one, but like one that could really damage you
Just
going
take you out.
forward.
Yeah,
Because I've had teammates that they've had brain damage. They've lost their sense of taste, their sense of smell
Wow.
from hitting their heads so many times. It's like, nah, I'm not doing that. No way I'm doing that. I'm not compromising the longevity of my life, because even a good cycling career can only get you into your early 30s. So it's like, I knew that crash happened, right? The first race back, about 6 weeks later, another crash happened.
Oh, damn.
Same thing, same injuries, same process. We won't get into the details. I had a bit of a crisis at that time. Went on a bit of a session right after the crash. Did some dumb shit and lost like 3 days worth of memory of my life. And that was a turning point for me. When I got home and I realised what had happened, I was like, this is toxic. I need to get out.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to be the one to make the decision.
Yeah.
Because I knew from there, I was like, okay, how am I going to pick the pieces up? This is the first 3-4 months of the season. Really important in terms of form building and getting racing time in the legs. I didn't have it. I was injured. I spent most of it sitting around. I was like, I'm not getting back to full form until next year, really. Realistically, that's how long the process is. So that means I'm not going to get a contract on this team. And I was like, do I want to be scurrying around and begging people for a contract on another team? That's not how I want to live my life. I don't want to be begging for anything.
Yeah.
Because I value myself more than that. So I was like, I want to be the one to make the decision. And I went and, cut a long story short, I just announced my retirement, and without even speaking to my team. My team manager at the time was another one who had zero consideration for me as a person. I was sending emails that were borderline suicidal at the time.
Yeah, wow.
And got no response.
Yeah.
Imagine that these days. It's a fucking joke. And I didn't... Yeah, at the time... Look, let's not get into it too deeply.
Yeah, there's a lot in that, isn't there?
There's a lot in it. There's a lot in it.
You think why he was that way too.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily his fault. It's not necessarily his fault, right?
Yeah.
Because I've sent him a message recently. I've got over it, right?
Right.
Recently enough, I sent him a message and I said, look, because I got back cycling throughout lockdown last year and I was doing a bit more of it, and when I'm on the bike, obviously it brings back memories. Yeah. And I've gotten past it. And I texted him and I said, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks, like really thank you, because if I didn't get that opportunity, I'd never be happy and I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah, and the growth. Yeah,
and like understanding the magnitude of what he was doing at the time, it was a fucking hard thing to do. Running a cycling team like that, dealing with that many people, trying to keep sponsors, it was a high pressure environment. Sport is a business, and that's what we were talking about earlier. People forget that sport is a business. The emotions of sport take over, but ultimately it's business. And I was just too young, too naive at the time to think that. And I was like, you know what, fuck this, I'm retiring. I'm going to put it on a Cycling Ireland website, or it was the Irish Cycling News website or whatever. I'm going to reach out to them. I'm going to say, I'm done, I'm retired. It made for juicy gossip at the time. It was great. But that was it, man. Like, I just said, fuck this, I'm going to do something. If I'm going to do something and put this much effort into it, I want to be really good at it. I want to be happy. And I'm the same today, exactly the same today.
I think that's a really good thing. Like I heard Stephen ask somebody one time, it was a CEO of like a really big company. I think it was a company like Monza in the UK, which is like an alternative banking company. This guy was like a billionaire. And he said, throughout all of what you did you ever stop to think if you were happy? And the guy said, no, I didn't. Because growing up, I think for me, and it sounds like for you, you might sound like you're a bit better at it than me, but like if you were happy or not wasn't part of the conversation. Like getting the end goal and the satisfaction was just meant to make you happy, you know? Whereas like we've learned to be happy in the process now.
Yeah, the result is what's seen to be making you happy. And I think, you know what, it's interesting having this conversation because there's certain things I'm kind of uncovering now about myself that I didn't even fully realise as to why I am the way I am. Another thing is, like, I can say it because my mom's brother is probably not going to listen to this. So my mom's brother, he's a farmer, dairy farmer, very successful dairy farmer. I remember one time I'd left school at this point. I was full-time cycling. obviously that's hard for an Irish family to understand, right? Like,
no idea.
they don't see that as a safe career choice, right?
That's not a viable option.
No, and I was sitting at my aunt's house, and my uncle, even though if he might have been joking, he might not have been joking, right? I don't know, but he turned to one of my cousins and said, "Oh, you better keep studying in school now, or you'll end up like your cousin Eoin." You know?
Said that about you?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's horrendous.
That for me is more fuel for the fire.
Yeah.
When it's like,
you just don't say those things to me.
No, you don't need to say that to me.
Yeah.
That's not gonna affect me in a negative way.
No.
And it's funny as fuck because the moment I signed a professional contract, he was all about me, you know.
Yeah.
And now, like, even what I'm doing now, it's like it's continued into doing things at a higher kind of capacity, and like it's just, I don't even have to explain myself now. Don't have to explain that, but it's these things, these people telling me over the years, nah, this, that, the other. It's a proving people the wrong thing, but it's mostly proving to myself that I can do it.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Do you feel like that's where you're at these days?
Yeah, and that's where I think it's more proving to myself that I can prove them wrong to a degree.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, it's interesting for me, sort of, growing up. I think my parents are very much like yours. They encouraged me and told me, I think there's a double-edged sword here. I was good at a lot of the things that I did growing up. Whether that was a subconscious thing and I just chose to do things that I was good at in the early stages. Like I played hockey. I was always good on roller skates and stuff like that. So maybe I just gravitated towards it. Maybe my brain was like, well, you're good at that. Don't go and play that. Don't go play tennis because you're better at that. But yeah, I was always told that, congratulated for being good at things. Growing up, I was never told the opposite. No.
Yeah, and me too. Like I just feel like I was always a bit maybe overlooked, Yeah. Which allowed me to kind of work harder in the shadows. Yeah. And then the compounding effect came into play. Yeah. The consistency in my work ethic and dedication and resilience, and I had that kind of almost a bit of animosity towards certain people, and I was like, I'm gonna fucking show that guy,
Yeah.
But and I even got that with hair. There's a story I'll tell you about that in a sec, when I started cutting hair. But let's go, should we get onto that part?
Yeah. So you ended your the cycling's over.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're still in a bit of identity crisis once the cycling was over, or was it a clean slate?
No, it was still a bit up in the air. I didn't know what I was going to do. I started experiencing partying for the first time. So I'm like 21 at this point, right? Ever rarely drank. Yeah. Never partied. Missed out. I'm saying this if people are listening, in inverted commas, because I didn't actually miss out on anything. No. People would always say to me, "Oh, did you feel like you missed out on like the college life and the partying and this and that?" I went to college. I went and visited my mates in college, and I watched their behaviour, and I watched the people that they hung around with and their behaviour, and I just thought, what a bunch of fucking losers. So, I'm sorry, like, if I'm going to offend anybody, I went to a college house party once, and there was kids there ripping toilets out of the ground, punching holes in walls, and doing all sorts of mad shit, and I was thinking, this is so disrespectful to their parents. Because like at that point, right, I was about 18, 19 at that time. Once or twice a year I used to go out because I'd come home, I'd be in my off season. It was okay for me to go out at that time, so I did. I experienced them times, and I realised I wasn't missing out on anything. I was actually in the university of life. Yep. Figuring things out that actually mattered. Yep. I remember going to one of my college friends' houses once, and she had a fucking box, and she used to put all her dirty dishes into the box and bring them home for her mom to clean them at the weekend. No.
That's the worst.
I was astounded. And here I am, yeah.
Spent all these years.
But here I am, bro, like the McCarthy who gets everything handed to him on the golden platter, and there's kids there doing that. Couldn't believe it. Yeah. Mind blown. Yeah. So I didn't miss out on anything. If anything, they missed out on what I was doing. Yeah. I had the real life experience.
They missed out on that
development. Yeah. There's stuff that happened within that 4 years of my cycling career. Even places that I went to, places I visited, beautiful places, and experiences that you can't buy. Simply just can't buy them. so I didn't feel like I missed out on anything. But when I finished, yeah, the identity crisis thing was kind of there for momentarily, but then I found hair pretty quickly, thank God. And when I did discover hair, I noticed pretty quickly that there was quite a big community and lots of places you could take it, and that kind of relit the fire for me. I was like, okay, now I can start again, you know. It's like being back at the start of cycling and chasing something bigger. But in between, funny story actually, I went and interviewed for Emirates to be a cabin crew.
Yeah.
And the reason why I did that is because when I finished cycling, I was like, what am I going to miss out on? Like, that I have as a cyclist, what am I going to miss? And the traveling aspect of things was something that I always thought, all right, yeah, I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss traveling the world for free, technically, seeing places, blah, blah, blah. I thought that was very important to me at the time. So I was like, how can I travel for free, see the world? My cousin worked at Etihad at the time, so I saw her life and where she was going, and I was like, this is cool. They get good money, they get put up in Abu Dhabi or Dubai. You know, I would probably be one of the only guys there, so I would get to meet girls. And at the time, I hadn't had a girlfriend really at that point. In school, I had a girlfriend the last year, but it was kind of half and half. I didn't really care too much.
At the time?
Not really. Like I was too focused on my own journey.
Yeah.
And getting to where I wanted to be, and like she understood, she was cool. But yeah, man. Interviewed for Emirates, got the job. They realized deeper. So basically, it was like an X Factor interview. It was really funny. It was actually
Did
really.
you have to sing?
No, almost. But it was really funny. It was like an X Factor audition. People were breaking down on their knees, crying when they didn't get it, and this and that. And
wow.
I was the only guy who got in out of about 80 people. Yeah, so I got in. I got the call from Dubai. Usually when you get the call, that's when they want you over there. So I went in with this no fucks attitude, right, and got it. Even me doing that interview was an experience, because it's just an experience. I was like, I knew at that time that I wanted to cut hair, so I didn't really have to do the interview. I just was like, you know what, I've committed to this. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna suss it out. I might meet some people. It will be a good experience either way. So I went, did it, got it. Eventually, they came back and wanted more pictures of my tattoos. At the time, I only had a few little tattoos. And sent them back, and they were like, no, you don't have the job. Best thing that's ever happened. Thank God.
Thank God for tattoos.
Thank God. I went and got a sleeve after it. I went and got a half
Cover
sleeve.
me up.
About a couple of weeks later, I went and got a half sleeve. Not that it was about that, but I knew at that time anyway that I wanted to do hair, because I'd started cutting hair. I started enjoying it. I enjoyed the social aspect of it. I enjoyed the same principles as I had in cycling. It was very A to B. You know, you get your result. You start a haircut, you finish a haircut. Yeah. Tick the box. A to B, happy out. At the end of the day, come home, pocket full of money.
Yeah.
Had some good interactions. Yeah. Socially, it was great for me at the time.
Yeah.
Like when I was going out in my hometown, you know, I'd get a lot of recognition. You know, people would be getting to know me for who I actually really was. That's when people started saying, oh, you're different to what I thought you were going to be. You're alright for a McCarthy, like, you know. People would say that kind of stuff to me. You know, sorry to my family if I'm saying anything that I feel like is putting them off, but it's not. But that's just the generalization that we get given. It's the label that we get given. Unfortunately, it's the truth. You know, whether we like it or not, it's the truth. And that went great for the first year or so. I started like really building up a good clientele. My mom was teaching me at the time, and yeah, I kind of took to it really quickly, to be honest.
So, do you remember the day that you decided to do hair? Like, there must have been a day where you thought, okay, this is what I'm doing now.
I can't particularly remember a specific day, but I do remember like having my struggles with it at the start.
Okay. What were they?
Like I couldn't figure out like why you'd hold the scissors in the third finger.
Yeah.
That was weird to me. The comb and the scissors and how to manage that at the beginning was very off-putting. There was days where I was like, oh fuck this, I'll just go back cycling, you know.
Yeah.
And it was hard to get the grasp of things. Like I was always pretty good with my own hair, like styling it and stuff. and I was always really into it. I've probably got worse at that with my own as the years have gone on. I don't care about that as much anymore because it's just something I don't care about. I get a hair. Yeah, exactly. I get a haircut that's just does its own thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had all the haircuts growing up, but I don't particularly remember a day where I said, yeah, this is it for me. But I do remember a time where I knew I was going to do it for a long time.
Right.
So basically, I was about almost a year in. I'm just trying to gather my thoughts here to make sure that I tell the story right. So
get the timeline.
Yeah, so like up to this point, right, I had been cutting hair in my mum's salon. I rented a chair off her, built my own clientele. I was doing 70, 80 haircuts a week in my first year.
Smashing them out.
Smashing them. 1 day a week off.
That's absolutely fine in your first year.
Yeah.
You know,
but that was like cold turkey. That was cold. I was straight in, like no messing, you know, like straight in. In that first year, I reckon I put 3 to 4 years of work in.
But that's great. Practice.
Yeah,
practice.
it was
just
non-stop.
a year of practice.
It was a conveyor belt of haircuts, right?
Yeah.
Like not knowing if I'm doing things right, doing things wrong. I was doing a barber course at the time as well. It was Paul Mack in Cork. He taught me how to use the clippers and fade a bit more, and the mixture of that and working in the salon really kind of sped up my growth. From there, I started discovering this online world of hair, you know. I started looking on Instagram, seeing people doing stage work, seeing how big the hair industry actually is.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I was amazed by it. I was like, this is sick. There's levels to this too, you know, because my mom never really got into that. So like, I never was exposed to it until I got into hair myself. And I started seeing the Great British Barber Bash at the time.
Yeah.
They were doing these big shows, this and that. So discovered Menspire, went to their course. Basically, I was just doing all these different things, right? And at that time, I kind of knew. But I went to the Great British Barber Bash in Manchester a couple of weeks before I came to Australia.
Yeah.
And that was the day where I was like, hair is for me.
Awesome. Something that really strikes me there is like the vision that you had from so early on. Where do you think that came from? Do you think that came from cycling? Like because you'd been exposed to what a level you can do things? Because I feel like that for me, early days, I'd see those people and be like, wow, just don't even know I'll ever get to that, you know? But you almost seemed like you had a certainty, like, yep, that's attainable. Like, yeah,
so like I went to, from an early age, I was very careful, I guess. Not an early age, but an early time in my hair career. I was careful about the mentors that I picked. So I would look at people who I looked up to and I aspired to, and I would only seek the education from them, really.
Because your journey has not been a conventional journey, has it?
Very unconventional.
Because mine was conventional, you know.
Yeah.
Started at school, did the Saturday job, got the apprenticeship, just turning the wheels through all that. Like,
mine's very...
yours are very unconventional. And that those things go hand in hand. You had a vision with an unconventional process. It's very unique. There's not many people with your story.
No, and when I think about it, like, might be a bold thing to say, but like, I've probably had one of the fastest growing careers in men's hair ever. If not, like who's done anything close to what I've done in that time.
Yeah.
It's a bit nuts to think about it, you know, and it's nice to reflect about it and think about it in that way because I don't really get to say it too much. No. Apart from being on a podcast like this.
This is where we can say it though, but don't ever feel ashamed about saying it because there's so much value in it.
Yeah.
And this is where, you know, like we always say, question the blueprint, challenge the status quo. As long, you know, we always talk about we get a bit frustrated with certain things, certain timelines of certain courses and things, but I think as long as the mentorship's good and you've got a really good process of learning and a practice routine, there's no reason why that can't be the new model.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that's, I think, when I think about my why these days, I want to share my mindset with people to help them in achieving whatever they want. Because to me, nothing is impossible. Like, I know it sounds cliche, right? Like, it's like a fucking Adidas phrase or something, you know, but nothing is impossible. And
No.
I went into it with that naivety. We touched on that in the first episode too. My naivety helped me to get to where I'm at, because I wasn't afraid.
Yeah, I think
But I observed first before I made my moves.
Interesting. I've thought about, since our first episode, when I sort of observed that about you, you know, thinking that naivety comes from the unconventional way that you got into the industry. You know, I saw it from a very conventional way. You didn't. You got open access to your mum's salon, and she put you right there straight away.
It was good for her to do that too.
Amazing.
You know, because like that's the thing, right? I didn't have any, like in your journey, like or a lot of hairdressers' journeys, I didn't sweep the floor. I didn't do any of that nonsense. I didn't like have to do that. You know, because it was a new era.
And I think you'd already done your floor sweeping
in
a different concept.
Yeah,
different. Your cycling years.
Yeah. I'd done all that. I put that work in.
You know.
No, I wasn't there for that type of behavior. But yeah, I think even the learning from the Emirates thing taught me a bit too.
Yeah.
It's almost like the less you care, sometimes the less you care about the outcome.
Yeah.
Or attach yourself to the outcome, the more you're going to get the results. So like that time going into the Emirates thing, didn't care about the outcome. Very much similar to when we did the Andis interview a couple of years later in Sydney. We were around this boardroom. Didn't care about the outcome. I don't know what came over me that day, but I just had this air of confidence about me. Where I was just sat back in the chair.
Yeah.
I was the one answering all the questions.
Did you have your shades on as well?
I think I might have even had the shades on. When I came into the room, I definitely had the shades on. Yeah.
Wow.
I was a bit hungover too, probably at the time.
Yeah. Relevant.
So yeah, but I didn't care. I did care, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of that letting off that you don't care.
Yeah, it's a pulling from both ends.
Yeah.
You know.
It's the balance. It's the balance. It's the EQ stuff.
You do care, but you can't care too much.
Yeah.
You know,
you can't.
It's the polarity of pulling from both ends.
And it was I learned that from my cycling days too, about like not attaching myself too much to any one thing, because I had to change my identity when I finished cycling. Yeah. So I'm kind of like that now. And yeah, so let's go back to how I got to kind of that unconventional way of thinking, and how it's just such a mad story, man. I can't even comprehend it sometimes. Like even up to this point, it's like fucking hell. I've lived like 3 or 4 lives at this point. Yeah, you know.
Well, I used to explain my story to people. You know, saying the first like 10 years of my career, and they'd be like, "Oh my god, you've done so much." Yeah. Like going from leaving home to this to visas to awards to this. It's like moving to there to this. And it's like, yeah, you live a lot of lives. Like the experience you build. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah, and that's why I feel maybe misunderstood sometimes too. Right. You know, because it's like nobody knows the full extent. It's like the iceberg; people don't see the bit underneath. Nobody knows the full extent of what I've gone through. But anyway, in that first year, went to all these courses, worked my ass off, worked really hard, and my mom entered me into Barber Apprentice of the Year in Ireland. Came to Australia. Got a call a couple of days later, and I had won it. Oh wow! I won 2016 Irish Barbering Apprentice of the Year, and to me that was me qualified. You know, I was qualified then. I did my qualification in 1 year. I was happy. But to just slightly backtrack on that, how I got to Australia, I went to the Men's Wire course, and this is another thing, right? Like this is, if you don't ask the questions, you don't get the answers. This is a great one. So I went to the Men's Wire course in Dublin. Glenn and Josh ran the course. Josh had just been in Australia not that long before, maybe about a month before, and now that I was finished my cycling career, I had the first opportunity to come to Australia and visit my cousins. So my cousin was getting married later in the year, so I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go to Australia. Maybe I will stay there for maybe 6 months to a year and then come back and I'll run my business at home, because to me I had a good business going. I could see into the future, very safe, very secure, had all my clients, but really it was capped. And I vividly remember one day walking around our local lap that me and my mom would do nearly every morning. We'd go for a walk,
And I got to this point where it's like the highest point and you look out over the town. And I looked over the town and I said to my mom, I was like, there has to be more than this. There just has to be more than this for me. Like, I've outgrown it already. 1 year and I've already reached my maximum capacity.
Yeah.
How much more can I charge? Am I happy doing the work? No. I was like, what I need to do now is I need to do the stuff that I felt like I missed out on during my cycling career. I need to go to Australia. I need to visit my cousins. I need to travel. And I need to just explore for a little while.
Yeah.
And I can take my skill that I now have and apply that. Because at the time I thought I was great at cutting hair. I thought I was amazing, you know. Like, I was fully booked, all this stuff. But I always had a bigger vision in mind, you know. And like, I would act that way too. Like, so at the time I would follow Gary Vee a lot, and he more or less taught me my principles of marketing and how to like get clients and how to do all this stuff, right? And then I was also seeing people on Instagram from around the country, like the guys from JFH, Neil Toner, Mickey Graham. They were great. Love Neil and what he's doing now. It's amazing. Ryan Cullen at the time, you know, all the boys from the Barber Bash, Menspire, like watching what they were doing online. I was like, all right, well, like, this is the blueprint. If I can kind of follow it somehow and do my own, put my own spin on it, then it'll work. So I started using Snapchat and marketing my work through Snapchat.
Really?
Yeah, and it was funny, right? Like, I was out one night. This is a funny story. So I was out one night, and this girl came up to me in my hometown, and she says, "Oh, Owen McCarthy, like, who the fuck do you think you are? All over Snapchat, like, you think you're Kanye West or something? Like, you only cut hair."
Oh, wow. We've
So
all heard that one.
I was like, all right, okay. I was like, and what do you do? She's like, "Oh, I'm studying law. I'm going to be a lawyer." I'm like, all right, so you're going to defend rapists
Yeah.
and people who like kill
Yeah.
people.
Essentially.
So like, where's your moral compass at? You know, first and foremost, to be coming at me like that. And I was like, plus, like, who cares? Like, I probably made more money than you today anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
She's like, what? No way, cutting hair. You can't make money cutting hair. I was like, all right, whatever you think. How much money did you make today? She said. I was like, I don't know, like €200.
Yeah.
No way. That's like
Just
200
couldn't
euros is a
believe
lot. Like, you
Yeah.
know, imagine making £200 in a day.
In a day, yeah.
Like, everything was going into my pocket. Like,
It was almost
you know?
1 week wage at that time.
Yeah, mental, right? Anyway, long story short, I took my phone out at the time and I recorded her saying it. I was like, "Can you just say that again? You know, everything you just said, please." She was like, "Yeah. Oh, McCarthy, you think you're Kanye West?" Right, she went on with it. And I kept that video, and I was like, I went home that night and I sent her a message. I blocked her, but I blocked her after. I sent her a message first, and I was like, "You can no longer be part of this journey, but thanks for the fuel," or something like that.
Wow.
And I just blocked her. And I remember being here for about 2 or 3 years. 2 years into maybe my journey here in Australia, I unblocked her again. And she might have seen some stuff, she might have not. Who cares? But it's just, sometimes you just need that little bit of somebody to hate on you, you know, to push you a little bit further. But that's just a funny story. But like, yeah, so I went to the menswear course, right? Coming back to that, sorry, I just keep getting sidetracked. There's just so many elements to this story. But
This is what it's all about.
coming back to the menswear part, I was at their course, and during the lunch break, I asked Josh, "How was Australia?" And he like loved it, absolutely loved it. And I was like, "I'm thinking about going there, you know, like, I've been looking into some jobs." At the time, I was looking at jobs in Culture Kings and a few places like that. I didn't have a clue where to look.
You're not going away.
So I was talking to a few different people, and Josh said, "Well, I've actually got a place that I can recommend you to go, and I think it would really suit you and your interests." And I was like, cool. So he pulled the phone out, and I watched him type the message to Jordan,
Wow.
who's the owner of Area,
Yeah.
and asked him, "So when, you know, are you still looking for staff?" Jordan said, "Yeah." The next question was, "When can you get there?" I was like, "Give me 6 weeks. I need 6 weeks to be able to just wrap things up,
Yeah.
you know, let a lot of people down, because all my clients were just so happy with what was going on. They were so happy with their trims, all this, right? Like, even my family and everything. I just needed 6 weeks, because I was like, all right, I'm off again, you know.
Yep.
Up to this point, 17 to 21, I was away back home for 1 year, and I was like, I'm off again.
Off again. Yeah.
But I was always like, I'll go for 6 months and then I'll come back and I'll set up. I'll maximum 1 year, whatever, right? So initially I'd planned to go at the end of the year, but then I was given like a 6-week notice, you know? So I was like, all right, fuck it, you just got to take this opportunity when it comes. You can't turn any opportunity down, especially when it's coming from somebody like Josh, you know?
Yeah.
So thanks, Josh, for that. And 6 weeks later, I was in Australia. And it was funny, I always had this way of visualizing things and making things happen. I remember the very first day I got here, I was walking down Flinders Street and there was a big poster next to Flinders Street Station, and it was the Justin Bieber Purpose World Tour.
Wow.
And I remember looking at that poster and thinking, I'm going to do that. I'm going to cut the hair at that. Because I saw a guy in Ireland do it for them when they were in Ireland. So I was like, I'm going to somehow figure out how to make that happen.
Wow.
And I would go around telling people that was going to happen. When I was drinking and stuff, I'd be like to my Irish friends at the time, I'm going to cut hair to Justin Bieber tour. And they were like, yeah, right. As if, you know.
You put it out there.
6 months into my journey in Melbourne, boom, there we were, backstage, cutting hair, Justin Bieber, watching the concert next to his grandparents. Now for me, at that time, 6 months into my journey here, doing something that big, and I grew up loving Justin Bieber, thinking like, you know, he was God, like, you know, sick kind of like. And
I was a bit past that. I was a little bit older than that,
but like, yeah, I always had the respect, you know, because like people would always just talk shit on him, but really, again, just haters.
Yeah.
But to get to be that close and to cut like the people that close to him, and like I never got to cut his hair, of course, but like just to even be there and be in that environment and see how Jordan was acting at that time in that environment too, really inspired me to be able to think, you know what, anything is possible here.
He's so good in those situations.
Oh, it's nuts. But yeah, when I came to area, it was a rude awakening for sure. I thought I was really good. Here I was, Irish barbering apprentice of the year, coming in, you know,
hot shot,
feeling myself. Yeah. And I was quickly humbled. I was around an amazing team. Touched on this in the first episode too. Jordan, Danny, Aloy, Yella. I spent a lot of time with Yella too. Yella was one of my biggest influences, I think, because me and him started at a similar time, and we were growing a clientele together. Yeah. So there was a lot of time in the shop where we weren't busy, and we could talk about hair, and he really inspired me a lot in terms of my finishing and styling and keeping things natural. So that really allowed me to grow, being in that environment. And it was a sink or swim situation, much like cycling, right? You kind of rise to the level or you don't.
Yeah.
And I love being that little bit. I love reaching for something, because there's only one place you can go from when you're at the top. Yeah. You know, if you're at the very top of the ladder, where do you go from there? You either maintain your position there, or you go down one step of the ladder, and there's always somebody waiting to try and get to that next step, right?
I always say there's always someone lurking in the shadows.
So I just worked as hard as I possibly could and put everything into it. And at the same time, when my first couple of years in Australia, I really enjoyed them. My mate Matt moved over after a couple of months. He joined me. We had such an amazing couple of years, made up for all that lost time in my cycling career of my partying and that. And then, you know, even within that time, when I was enjoying myself, I was still really kicking goals. Like, you know, I was doing a lot of stuff. Like when we went to Hair Expo, came out of that Hair Expo where we met you, and I was just handed this title of global educator for Andis.
Wow.
You know, it's like Andis are putting together an education team. That's how my education journey started. Do you want to trial for it? I was like, yeah. Josh came over from Menspire that year, Josh and Charlie. The first ever time I cut hair on stage in front of people, I was next to Naz, the Streets barber, and Josh LaMonica.
Wow.
Now, at the time, they had the microphones and I didn't.
Yeah, thank God.
Thank God.
Thank God.
But I was shaking, man. I was like, oh my God. But at the same time, I was like, all right, well, if this is the person that you visualize yourself being and want to do this stuff, then just step into it, do it, take the opportunity and see if you like it or not. and I did. Andis were really happy. They wanted to invite us to do a meeting the next day. Went to the meeting. That's when I had that confidence.
Yeah.
And came out of it, did the whole process that they asked us to do, and ended up becoming a global educator for them.
Wow.
And that's when it was like, wow, okay, anything's really possible over here.
Bomb drop there, like, whoa.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but like at that point, it was nothing but a title, because I didn't have the work put into being an educator at that point. I was kind of thrown into the deep end, and then it was up to me to work myself up to earning that title.
Yeah.
And now 3 years in to being an educator for them, 3 to 4 years in, I really feel like worthy, like my worth in being an Andis educator now is high in Australia, for sure, and across the world. They're using my stuff for all over magazines, and
rightly so.
You know, I think it's interesting, man. So that's how the education journey started. We spoke about all the competition work yesterday, you know, being a competitive person and this and that. Like for me, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm overly competitive in terms of like I'd hate to see someone else winning. No way. I don't mind. I'm more competitive with myself and stimulating myself and keep myself moving forward. I think the competition work brought out a different side of my creativity and gave me something to work towards, which I really liked. And it was Danny and Jordan really pushed it at the time that we did the competition work. And I remember going to my first ever hair competition after that one where we met, the first HBA, and we took out everything, me, Danny and Jordan. It was just the three of us at Area at the time, and we took out first and second in every category and Salon of the Year. And we were just like
whoa.
It was such a buzz, man. It was so crazy. It was so fun, you know. And to feel part of that, and like it really helped my levels of like knowing. Even that day before doing the cuts and stuff that I did, I was like, all right, here you are now. You're representing like what is seen as Man United, you know.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what we thought.
Yeah. At
the time, this is before we had any recognition, really. And you got to make it happen. You got to either step up or you're going to just slip away into the shadows. So we stepped up, took it, and from there it just kept going. After that, in that year, so 2016 I won Irish Barbering Apprentice of the Year. 2017 I won Victorian Barber of the Year. Went to the Australian final, fucked up and lost. But what happened was, in the Australian final, this is a funny story, I don't really care, but in the Australian final, they took out one of the categories, so it was a scissor cut, right? There was a scissor cut category, which I thought was one of my strengths. They took it out and replaced it with hair art, doing designs, and you had to replicate something. So you couldn't come up with your own thing, you had to replicate something. Now to me, it does assess skill, but it's just a bit unfair. Because the guy who won, I ended up beating him in the Victorian.
Yeah, true.
I beat him in the Victorian and South Australian, but he was just really good at hair art.
Yeah.
And I did something that looked like a fucking toddler did it. It was awful.
Drawn it on for crayon.
It was so awful, man. Oh my god, it was embarrassing.
I can't do hair art.
But I don't care. I didn't want to do it anyway. Like,
no.
And at a certain point into it, I remember I did the first 3 categories, and one of the judges was like, kind of gave me the nod of approval, and he was like, just keep doing what you're doing, you know. Got to that and it just crumbled, you know. But I didn't care, right? That was just another lesson, another journey, a lesson along the journey.
You wouldn't want to be known to be the guy to be best at hair art, though. You know, that probably wasn't your aim, was it? No. And look, it was just, even to win the competition wasn't my aim either. It was just something it's just something we were doing that year. Yeah. And to win the Victorian, I think when I won that was another pivotal moment in my career, and it was like Danny was really proud of me at the time. He was really like influential in my career and still is, and it kind of just all kept spiraling from there. I feel like every week and every day over here in Australia, something is happening for me or for us as a brand. It's actually astounding, the power of the compounding effect and the consistency and how you work and how your mentality is on a daily basis is what adds up. Not the 1 or 2 times that you show up and do a big amount of work and then do nothing for months and just do some bullshit and nonsense. It's the everyday
little bits of incremental detail that matter.
And that's the big bit that people don't see.
No.
Is you take, my journey that we spoke about on the other episode, your journey we've spoken about today. Man, there's so much compounding going on, and now, like you say, each week is like getting the cake and eating it.
Yeah.
It's like boom, 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 boom. But it doesn't come by chance or by luck.
No.
And no one's just handing it to us.
No.
It's constant work. It's still constant work.
Absolutely.
Like,
and do you know what's interesting? Like, I've got these, again, pivotal moments when I think about each year. So that's 2017, right? Victorian Barber of the Year. 2018 rolls around about a year later, and I get a phone call from Andis. Hey Eoin, we want you to come to Shanghai in China to do a hair show.
Wow.
And I'm just like, wow, yeah, that was my response.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
This is happening.
So I remember being on the balcony in my house at the time in Richmond, and I just remember looking out at the city, and I was welling up. I was like, I can't believe that I'm, after creating this reality for myself, that one of the biggest brands in the world wants to fly me to China to do a hair show. Like, how crazy is this? And I hadn't been home to Ireland at this point, so I was over here for nearly 2 years at that point. I hadn't been home to Ireland. I rang my mom and I was like, you'll never believe it, I'm going to China to do a hair show. Like, at that point I'd done a hair expo in Australia. I had my bit of experience there. The guy from Andis who looks after Asia Pacific, he saw me at hair expo and what I was like on stage and stuff, and he was like, yeah, we want him for China.
Wow.
So went to China, but I ended up buying my mom a ticket.
Beautiful.
I just sent it to her. I was like, check your inbox. Just bought her a ticket to come. So I met her there for the first time in nearly 2 years.
What a gift.
And yeah, again, like you said yesterday, it was funny, who brings their mom to a hair show? But to be honest, like, that's something that in her career she would have never have seen as possible.
Yeah.
And she's almost like like her fire has almost relit through me. Yeah. Like, so her career almost restarted. It was like a rebirth when I started cutting hair.
Yeah.
And she said to me from day one, and this is an amazing thing about my mom, she's like, I was about a year in or 2 years in, or when she came here, I think first, she was like, you're better than me already.
Wow.
Yeah. In your own right and in your own skills, you're already like better than me, And I was just like, wow, like, it's incredible. And so anyway, that happened. Went home to Ireland a few weeks later. Came back again a year later and just asked me to go to China again. Went to China again. Didn't have the best experience that time. Won't get into it. But yeah, it was just, even to be able to go and get that opportunity to go, and I would go again, I'd go again, I'd take the opportunities. It's just, that's the lesson that's in this. You need to take the opportunities when they're there on the table. Yeah. You just never know what they're going to lead to. And over the course of these couple of years being here, I started building my own personal brand, going to Hair Expo, doing this, doing that. It got to the point where Hair Expo 2019, I got asked to do a seminar. This is from showing up for free, right? This is how this happened. Showing up for free, not getting paid to do stuff, doing shows like the open mic nights, stuff like that. I remember people asking, you getting paid for that? And it's like, no. What do you mean? Like, why would I get paid for that? Like, it's literally free advertising.
Just showcasing them, yeah.
Like, I'm in a room full of 200-300 people who can all be potential clients. I couldn't pay for that to happen.
No.
So why would I expect to be getting paid? Where I'm getting paid is now, 2 or 3 years later. People don't see that initially, and that's the problem with our industry. It's very brick and mortar, You do your job and you get your money. You do your job and you get your money. If you're not getting paid for this haircut, then it's not worth doing it.
But that can be the trap of working in a barbershop too, or a hair salon. Every minute counts. Like, every minute is $1 in money.
Yeah, and I think if you have the bigger picture in mind, you don't get caught in that. And Jordan's very good with that. Yeah, because he would do the celebrities' hair for free. So like, in all of this time, I have got the opportunity to do celebrities' hair. We went to the Justin Bieber concert. We did that. We also did the Weekend show, Post Malone. Yeah, all these massive shows, right? Crazy. To me, they were one of the most eye-opening things, because I love music, right? And to be backstage at the weekend for me,
wild,
nuts. Something
priceless.
that
It's priceless.
Something that people from where I'm from can't get. You can't get these opportunities. Very reminiscent of my granddad, I feel, because coming back to the very start of the story, his best friend is a promoter who helped bring Michael Jackson to Ireland.
Wow.
So he was around that. So that's why his mentality was the way that it was. Abundance. The abundance mindset. The anything is possible is mindset. But where were we from there?
Just talking about just turning up, showing up, doing things.
Yeah,
for free,
sorry.
you know?
Yeah. So that's where we were. So turning up, doing things for free, that accumulated to me getting my own spot at Hair Festival, 1 of 5, with no brand backing, just my name on the education show.
Unbelievable.
And from there, it just kind of kept accumulating to the point where it's like, okay, well, now we need to set something up. We need to do Area Academy.
Yeah.
You know, I think there was a bit of hesitance within the team at certain points, whether we should do it, whether we shouldn't. I don't know why. In hindsight, it's probably been a good thing. It's kind of slowed me down slightly, but now I'm more ready than ever.
That hesitance, again, it's that light in the fire. It's like
it's like almost somebody telling me that I
do
can't.
it, and it's like, I'm gonna do it. You know, watch me do it. And it's not even a point of like just getting back at them. It's like, yeah, but you don't realize I really want to do this, and I think I can do it well.
Yeah, and I would go to everything. This is another thing that people misunderstand, is like the observing. For years, I would go to the things that I wanted to, so I would go to things that I wanted to do myself later. So like I would go to classes, I would go to this, I would be the student, I would be the shadower, I would watch, observe, learn, and then when the time is right, I'll implement.
But that was the same as me, you know. How many shows did I come to just watch you do stuff, or like just hand you something, or be a model for you to cut my hair? It's like people don't realize, they think, oh, Lee's just there because he works with Eoin. No, I'm there because that's what I want to do. You know. And all right, I enjoyed helping, but it's conditioning your mind to be ready, and subliminally, you know, you're there, people see you, and eventually they remember you. And that's what happened with my opportunity with Andis. People already knew who I was. The guy even said it. He was like, oh, I've already seen your work, I already know what you can do. And I was like, oh, okay, never spoken to this person before, you know.
I know.
Eventually people know and remember. So we say it's a big piece of advice. It's priceless, but just don't be afraid to turn up and do stuff for free, or even just be the guy on the sidelines, because eventually it will pay off.
Yeah, exactly. But be careful about who you do it with too.
Yes. That the trick in it is doing it with the right people.
Yeah, and I was always fortunate to be around the good mentors from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I'm still careful about who I choose. Just because you got all the awards doesn't mean that I want to be around you, you know? That's another thing. You might have all the titles, all the awards, all this. If I don't feel inspired by in some other way by your life, or just even how people are as people or as a person, no, I can't. Well,
that's what does it for me these days. You know, where's your moral compass as a human? Yeah, that's massive. Holds massive weight for me. Yeah, I couldn't care less. You could be the best hairdresser in the world, but if I'm not resonating, then
or the worst.
I'm sorry.
You could be the worst hairdresser in the world, and I won't judge you, because I've had that happen to me.
Yep.
When I wasn't quite at the standard, we won't mention any names, but I was definitely looked down upon. Yep. And I can relate. And I think when I started educating, one thing that I really prided myself on was the relatability factor, and being able to relate to the students or the people who were coming to the classes and stuff, because it wasn't that long ago that I was there myself. And I didn't like how I was treated there. Yeah. And I was like really easily able to relate to that.
But that comes back, I think that develops the abundance mindset.
Yeah.
You know, why would people do that to you? Maybe to keep you down there, you know, to keep you there. Whereas the abundance mindset, you understand there's plenty for everybody. You know, why wouldn't you celebrate somebody else's success? There's plenty for everybody.
Plenty for everyone. Unless somebody does something to me that really strikes a chord, then I'll support everyone.
Exactly.
You know, actions speak louder than words. You know, it might be cliche, but it's
Every
so
time.
true. It's so true. So that kind of brings us up to where we are now, I guess. And who knows where it's going to go next? It's just been a wild ride so far. As McGregor would say, it's been a wild ride. But it has. It's been a crazy ride, man. Like the experiences that I've had so far in my career, I'm so grateful for them. Really, really grateful for them. All the different people who are coming to us now, even like the whole Dyson gig, this and that. This is some stuff that we can get into on later episodes as to how that came about even. And it's just the divine timing of everything, the universe, and how the universe is working for you. If you are working with the right intentions and you're constantly showing up, you're always putting the work in, eventually it will pay off.
Yeah, and it's effort. You're showing up with effort. I think something that I see a lot lately is like just showing up. No, just showing up's not enough. You know, showing up with adequate effort.
And having the self-awareness. I think self-awareness comes into it too,
huge.
right? I've said this to somebody recently. Be careful what you wish for. Just because you look 100%. At us, just because you might look at us doing what we're doing, be careful what you wish for, because if you're not ready, you're going to mentally fuck yourself.
Yep.
Because what's got us to the point where we are now is the whole story. Your story yesterday, my story today. That mental warfare that you've gone through for that many years and that much time, there's all these little micro things that you learn within that journey that add up and accumulate to the person that you are today. And you can't just step into a role without having the emotional intelligence, first of all, and the work. You can't just how can you turn up to like a weightlifting competition as a skinny dude and try to lift that bar over your head? It's the same thing. You need to put the work in first.
It's conditioning.
And look, at a certain point, you have to take risks. Taking risks is like
calculated.
There's a difference between taking risks and taking calculated risks. But be careful what you wish for. It's not all that it seems to be. This is the tip of the iceberg. When you see this podcast, you don't realize how much work was even involved in putting into this, like in the production side of things, and the creating side of things, and only a few people will really get it. But be careful what you wish for. Sometimes it's not all what it's cracked up to be. What you see on Instagram isn't necessarily reality.
You wouldn't see the days behind the scenes. We're up at the crack of dawn, filming all day to 10 p.m. at night. You know, all day. Taking a quick break and you get home and you're still fucking writing back to messages or this. It's emails and the messages.
It's constant. It's constant. But you gotta figure out: is that what you enjoy? Is that what you like? I personally love it. I love it. I think
you can only do something like this if you enjoy that workload. I know I can throw myself into it. I actually thrive off of it. You know, the structure and the process. I love it. Yeah, like we're both very similar in that regard. Like I think when we had that week in Sydney when lockdown lifted, so we had a week where we had our days in the shop, and then I think it was on Saturday we flew to Sydney. We went straight to do the Reconnect show. Did the Reconnect show. The next 3 days then we did workshops. So 3 days, one day after the next. Massive days.
8 a.m. till 7 p.m. workshops for 3 days, and then flew back to Melbourne, had like a day off, and then went back into work.
To the shop.
But that day off isn't a day off.
I don't even know if I took a day off. I might have just gone straight back to the shop.
I think you might have went straight back. But I would have just been working on the admin side of things, catching up with emails, prepping Instagram posts, all of the stuff that you don't really see happening, which is just crazy.
But something that we touched on yesterday, you know, it's the journey. But just being so grateful for it. Like without it, you don't have a story, and without it, you've got nothing to look back on. And without it, you've got no conditioning.
No. And to finish that story about Sydney, where I was going with that was we both looked at it and we thought, fuck. But we really relished and enjoyed the challenge.
Enjoyed every minute of that.
We enjoyed being like, when we get to it, and being like, we actually did it. Can you believe it? But like high five, you know.
And I remember we got back, and it was like 4 or 5 days of just straight work, just hammering it out all day. We're just running off coffee and adrenaline, basically. And then we got home and we were like, wow, well, we just did that. 5 days is going to be easy, isn't it? 6 days, yeah, we could take that on, you know. And then we were like, right, well, we're conditioned for the 4 or 5 days now. We could go more.
Yeah.
And I think if these lockdowns and things didn't happen, we would have been in for some busy weeks and months, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
We were gearing up for like 3-4 straight weeks of just grind.
Absolutely.
But I was ready for it. I thrive in that stuff.
Getting hammered. This
is a challenge. It's a challenge to me.
It's normal.
Some people freak out. They're like, no, it's so much work. I'm like, bring on the challenge.
It's normal for me.
Sink or swim.
I once in my cycling career, this is the longest period of time that I did races for, but I once in my cycling career did 80 race days in one season.
Wow.
So 80 days of racing, right? 3 to 4 hours a race at that intensity. One time I did 12 race days in a row.
Psycho.
So, to me, this is easy.
Easy, yep.
Easy work. No problems.
Yeah.
But it's difficult in a mental capacity more so than a physical capacity. Yeah. I think physically I can keep going. I've got that conditioning. Mentally it's tough. And it's all the little intricate details, the organising of models, the organising of flights, the timings of everything. All these things add up to making you tired.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, I'm very much aware of this. If you're not careful, you're going to burn yourself out. And what's interesting now is I've just started this mentorship program with Charlie Gray. A lot of people don't know that because I haven't shared it online.
Yeah.
But it just shows we're still seeking improvement all the time. And one thing that I'm really wanting Charlie to help me with is not burning out.
Yep.
Knowing when to say enough is enough for today.
Yeah. I'm the same. I'm reaching out to people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn from them. I want to know what they do, how they do it. There's just still so much to learn.
Because like we said it yesterday, right? Like, what's the goal? Like, we both have this in our minds, and I kind of know somewhere deep in the back of my mind that it's not going to work out this way because we're always going to want to work hard. But you said something yesterday like, I'm planning for like a early retirement type of thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm obviously thinking the same thing, but I know when it gets to that stage, maybe we'll just be into different things. Maybe we'll be in a different business.
Yeah.
Who knows where this podcast could go? Yeah. Who knows what can happen? Every single day these days we're getting a different offer. Somebody's messaging that phone
right
every day with a new offer or a new opportunity or a new thing, and that's the compounding effect. When people discover us now and they see what we're doing now, this didn't happen in the last 10 minutes.
Nope.
And that's where the misconception is. Yeah. This has been going on for a long time. Even my educating journey, I think that there's probably a part of our education journeys that is kind of, I don't know, misunderstood. People don't realize how long I've been doing it. I've been in the trenches.
Exactly.
I've done it for ages.
I think for me now, like touching on sort of going for the early retirement, a lot of people misconceive that. They think, Lee just wants to retire early and sit on his ass. It's like, no. The reason I want to retire early is because then I feel like I can be a better human.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to keep trying to be the best human I can be, and I need to get to a certain point, because we were talking about it yesterday. You imagine 25 days out of the month that you could just have back to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine how much value you could bring as a human if you just had all your time, like more time available. So right now, I think that the education thing for me, and this is another sort of thing I've had to accept in my own mind and get straight in my own mind. At this point in my life, I feel like this is how I can be of best value to the people around me and the people in my industry. Do I think it's the best value I can be overall? Probably not. But this is what I can do with what I've got right now. And that's what I'm always focusing on. So for me to say I want to retire early, what I mean is I want to get time back so I can just keep trying to be a better human.
Yeah.
That's it. And so, but we taking into consideration all the framework and the mindset that we have, there's no way I'm going to be sitting on my ass doing nothing. Not a chance, because then I'm going to be working relentlessly at whatever it is then, you know, might even be charity work, but if I can do that, that's what I'm going to do, you know. You got to, I think it's really important to keep some purpose in your life.
Yeah.
And my purpose is just trying to be as good a human as I can possibly be.
Yeah. I think
because we need it. The world needs it. Like, the world needs better role models, males and females, whatever gender you are. We need better role models.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I just don't feel like it's getting better.
No, and you know, it's interesting. I've gone through a bit of a transition at the moment in my life. There was a time where I was really into all the flashy things, material goods, making myself look like I was successful.
It's hard to dodge that though, man.
But
Society throws it at you.
But I wasn't really, in the grand scheme of things, you know, because my mindset wasn't feeling that. But I thought if I brought the Prada bag, or if I bought this, or if I bought that I would feel achieved or accomplished, or people would look at me and think, this guy's got it going great, you know, because he's got this or he's got that. And I remember I'm embarrassed, man, when I wear that stuff now, you know, because that's not where my mindset's at. But ultimately, to get back to what you were just touching on, the early retirement thing for me is escaping the machine and working towards freedom. That's what all I really want to do.
Yeah, and that's exactly the same thing. I want the freedom to do the things that I think will help benefit the people around me and hopefully the world.
And to put that into context, when I say freedom, I don't mean, again, sitting at home on my arse watching fucking Netflix, because I don't watch TV.
Nope.
I don't
have a Netflix account, mate.
You don't even have a fucking TV in here, bro. Nope. You know? So that's the thing. We don't look at it that way. Freedom for me is to be able to choose your own schedule and choose the work that you want to do and when you want to do it.
Yep.
And how you want to do it. And why you want to do it. I think that's something really important. You need to ask yourself why you want to do these things. So that kind of wraps up my story, really.
Amazing.
I don't think I have much more to really give or say for today's episode.
It was great
listening
to it.
Throughout the podcast, we're going to continue to touch on different learnings that we've had from our journeys anyway. So I think it's probably enough for people to listen to for one day.
It's nice to just lay it out though, isn't it? Yeah. Lay it out, get it out of the system. It's always there if you want to look at it.
Shall I leave the podcast on a bit of a quote? Should I say something, one last bit of
give us a line.
Inspire me. A bit of enlightenment or something, huh? I'll try to be inspiring. No, but for real, I think don't give a fuck about what anyone says. Go after what you feel that you're capable of doing, and just always believe in yourself and be brave enough to go after it. That's pretty much it. I got a tattoo across my chest. It says Fortis in Arduis. It's a Latin quote. It's from my mom's family crest, and it says brave in difficulties in Latin. That's in my mom's handwriting. And I also have a tattoo on my wrist. It's a bit cringe, but it says believe. And I had that when I was a cyclist, you know, so I could look at it and be like, just, you know, believe in yourself. Because ultimately, if you can conquer the mind and you can control your own mind and not let anybody else or any external factors really get at you like that and affect the direction that you're going in, you can do anything. So thank you for taking this time, Lee.
Thanks for sharing the story, man. It was amazing to hear all the
look, there's probably some more to it, to be honest, but like I don't want to be going on and boring people, but I hope that people have taken something away from it or can relate in some way, shape or form. I'd love to hear some feedback too, you know, like or if anyone has any questions or queries. Again, quick little shout out.
Give a shout to the sponsors. Yeah.
Well, first of all, Jack Reed Foundation. We're gonna release very soon on the podcast ways and how people can donate to the Jack Reed Foundation.
They're doing great things,
and we're going to run some maybe competitions for them through the podcast as well.
Yeah.
We have CBD Culture Australia. Thank you for providing us with some CBD. We actually haven't taken any yet.
Premium extract.
Yeah. I generally like to take it when I'm relaxing, going to bed or going to sleep, or when I finish a day's work and I feel a bit like stiff and sore. We'll get into that on another podcast.
We got fired up for this one, didn't we? Bit of breath work.
Yeah, we did a bit of breath work this morning. Bit of a bulletproof coffee again. Fasting. My stomach just rumbled actually. Did you hear it?
No, I didn't. But letting you know.
And Tapped by Hatch digital business cards.
Yeah.
Got some very exciting stuff coming with them soon too. So we'll touch on all of these things further in further episodes. So thanks again for tuning in and watching the Network Podcast or listening to the Network Podcast, and we'll see you on episode 4.